that dress. It's very stimulating. And it's red. You know what Freud would have said about that dress.
And he would have been right. I admit it. I live in a highly excited state of overstimulation.
Listen, I'd really like to take you out to dinner tonight.
Welcome to Blood and Black Rum Podcast's Halloween 2022 special. This year we're Craven Some Cronenberg. We're bringing you Wes Craven and David Cronenberg movies all Halloween season from September through October 31st. Experience the visceral thrills with movies like A Nightmare on Elm Street, Rabid, Last House on the Left, and more.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Blood and Black Rum Podcast. I'm Ryan from Cultsploitation.com, and I am joined with my co-host Martin.
How's it going?
Doing well.
I just deeply yawned.
Sleepy. It's late in the evening when we're doing this show. Late being not quite 8 p.m. It's late for us old guys. But no, we're doing well. We're knee deep, wrist deep, whatever you want to call it, in our Craven Some whatever you want to call it, especially that I guess that works for this for what we're doing on this episode today. We're so far into our Craven Some Cronenberg Halloween series. And last time we did a Craven movie, so you know what time it is. It's time for Cronenberg. And for actual, purposes of this episode, we are doing a body horror episode, one that's pretty specifically probably one of Cronenberg's biggest body horror movies. And we have covered a number of Cronenberg movies, and for the most part, you haven't been too enthused with them.
No.
Yeah, you hadn't seen many of them, but they've kind of been lost on you. You haven't really loved them. And that's a shame, but we're hoping to fix that with today's episode.
Well, listen, you can't say that because you didn't find Rabid to be that great either. So,
yeah, I mean, I thought it was fair to middling.
And you didn't find Scanners to be like an outstanding masterpiece. So.
I didn't think it was amazing. I did it, and I would say that I enjoyed both of those movies. I just didn't think that they were, they weren't amazing.
Well, I didn't hate them. I liked Scanners enough. I gave it a 7. But, I mean, Rabid was just boring. Mm-hmm. as dull as a winter up in Thunder Bay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean...
what I should do is, throughout... I should have started when you're doing Cronenberg. I should just do a bunch of Letterkenny references throughout, Because yesterday was a Texas-sized Big 10-4.
That wouldn't be offensive or anything.
It's not. It's Letterkenny.
No, I mean, I we've done, I would say, a majority of Cronenberg's early work. Right? We've done a lot of the early stuff, and we kind of went in chronological order. It's kind of interesting how I decided to do that, and we didn't do that with Craven, but we did do that with Cronenberg's output. And in the previous episodes that we've done, we kind of started out with his early stuff. So we did Rabid, we did. Rabid was from 1977. We did Scanners, which is from 1981, and now we're on to Videodrome, which was released in 1983. It was the direct follow-up to Scanners, and Videodrome is a movie that I actually, I have seen, and I've seen it one time. I really, really liked it when I saw it. This was back in college. Fond memories of being in my college townhouse watching it with a flagon of vanilla vodka and just enjoying my
what a time in college.
Yeah, my Netflix physical disc delivery.
Being in college in between class. Oh, what am I gonna do?
Nah, this was at night. This was nighttime.
Oh,
wasn't in between classes. I wasn't that type of person. No,
Why
but
not?
I don't know. It was a fun time. I remember distinctly watching this with my friends in our townhouse, and we were just kind of blown away by the body horror element to Cronenberg's movie, and how weird it was, and how, it kind of went in different directions. And I think that's what really stood out to me. And I remember distinctly using it as inspiration for like writing a story, because I was doing creative writing at that time. I was in a creative writing class, and it's like I used it as inspiration. So
I miss those days.
Yeah.
Getting a late night. Hey, can you read this 20-page story? What'd you think?
Yeah. Yeah, that was the college time. It's a fun time.
Fun fact. I don't know why he was suggested for the project, but instead of Videodrome, we could have gotten David Cronenberg's Return of the Jedi.
Ooh, around the same time frame, huh?
Yeah, because in '83, when they were looking for a director for that, Cronenberg was one of the ones that they tried pitching it to, and he said no.
Can you imagine? That's just like a kind of a weird thing for Cronenberg to get in 1983.
Well, same thing too. David Lynch was also offered the chance.
Right.
Return of the Jedi.
Right. And David Lynch kind of got those weird offers too. Like, he did a few movies that didn't really make much sense. Late 1984, he did Dune. So, I mean, it kind of makes sense. He was like, I guess it was like this list of directors, right, that were like up and coming. It had cool movies,
weird
cool output. Yeah.
Like, hey, you did Eraserhead and The Elephant Man. You wanna do
like a big budget
Return of the Jedi?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, no.
So I can say thing too. Like, I can totally see Cronenberg too being like, "Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, what the hell do you want me to do with Space Wizards?"
Not only that, but like Cronenberg had made a pretty big deal about directing his own content too.
Yeah, that's from the scuttlebutt that I've read online. That's one of the main reason why he turned it down was he doesn't have an interest in
doing somebody else's work, right? Like, I mean, and that makes sense. That's he pretty much
he's on tour.
Yeah, he stuck to his own content, and I can appreciate that. Like, you know your own content best. So if you're the writer, who's better to direct it than you, who's like seen it from all different angles when you're writing it?
So yeah, I can see the polite Canadian way. So I can see Cronenberg turning that down, being like, "Sorry, no friend. I'm gonna make a film with UHF signals in it that take over your mind and body, and there's gonna be a vagina cut." Oh, thank you. And then David Lynch being like, "You tell that fat fuck George Lucas to get off his ass and direct the film himself, you fucking asshole." Making Dune.
The two sides of the auteur director. No, instead in 1983 we didn't get David Cronenberg's Return of the Jedi. We got Videodrome, and I'm happy with that. You had never seen Videodrome before this, right?
Nope, but it's just like with Scanners, another film that I know the name. I know, not like
you probably know the motto, right? The tagline, "Long live the new Flash." Like that's kind of a thing that's gone further than just the film itself.
The film poster is very recognizable and catchy. The basic idea behind the film. I know. So it's like Scanners. It's something that's definitely been around in the cultural zeitgeist enough for me to know about it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that probably Videodrome is one of David Cronenberg's most recognizable movies. Like, you have The Fly for sure, Scanners, yes, and Videodrome. Those are like the main three, and then also some of his earlier output like Shivers and Rabbit is very well received as well. But these are the big three, and I think Videodrome we kind of see because it's just prior to The Fly. It's about I think 2 years prior to The Fly. 3 years. You can kind of see where especially since we've done the movies pretty much in chronological order. There have been some that we didn't cover in between them, but you can kind of see the trajectory of Cronenberg heading that direction. Videodrome is pretty like nearly the same type of body horror element that The Fly gets to. Obviously influenced by different things, but you definitely can see the trajectory of Cronenberg's output and his thoughts, and how he's covering the body horror element to it. And he's grown a lot as a director too. In between, I would say even in between Scanners and Videodrome, those 2 years, he really has grown as a director and as a filmmaker, because here in Videodrome he's kind of got like bigger, he's got some bigger names, he's got some people, recognizable people. And when you're in Scanners, he kind of went for like still low budget Canadian actors, as we kind of mentioned when we talked about the acting in Scanners in our previous episode with Stephen Lack, who was lacking acting chops. Here, he's kind of, everything is kind of like at a higher level than his previous output.
James Woods definitely adds a certain cachet to
He does.
production.
Like I said, James Woods is now a complete asshole. I like to always point that out, just so you know. He's total garbage human, but he's pretty good in Videodrome. I do have to point that out. Like props to him. He's good in Videodrome, and that's.
Hey, listen, and if you forgot, a year ago when we did vampires, that's how Ryan would always preface introducing James Woods. James Woods, great actor, but now an asshole.
Pretty much, yeah. I like to
renowned Twitter asshole. James
Yep,
Woods.
exactly. I like to just point that out and preface everything.
He's an old man now, so it's just could be dementia.
I don't want any listeners to mistake this for appreciation for James Woods. I mean, I appreciate the man he used to be, right? The guy who did Videodrome. But
what about Hercules?
was he in Hercules?
Yeah, wasn't he Hades?
Was he?
Yeah,
I don't even know. You know what? To be honest with you, you have a better working knowledge of Hercules than I do. Yeah, he was. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I was say, so Kingdom Hearts, rip your alley.
You're true.
Yeah.
Yep, you're right. You're right. Yeah, no, that's right.
He was the secret agent that you have to do that stupid fucking flying mission that's a pain in the ass in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
Wow. Yeah, you know more about James Woods' output than I do, honestly.
Well,
yeah, no, he was
a thespian.
And to be honest with you, you talk about Hercules so much, I thought you were talking about the TV show.
No, that's
yeah. You meant the Disney movie.
That's Hercules. The journey begins.
Hercules. Yeah.
One day we will do all of Kevin Sorbo's fine work. Kevin Sorbo, also another renowned asshole. Also, always an asshole.
True. Yeah, I just like to point that out. I don't want anybody to mistake my appreciation for James Woods. So, but yeah, no, I mean, I like Videodrome. It definitely was an upward trajectory for Cronenberg, and here he's working with James Woods, who at the time had a pretty good career. He's working with Debbie Harry, which is an interesting choice for this movie, but I think works really well. Which we'll talk about. Debbie Harry's presence here. And I think that he's got a good thing going on, and he's got a bigger budget here, and we'll talk about how that adds to Videodrome's allure.
I would also say too, you mentioned the filmmaking aspect, but I would also say too, like, yes, he does, I think, quite a bit compared to Scanners, takes leaps and bounds in his filmmaking and his direction. But not only that, too, screenplay wise too. It's a much tighter, more focused, better written film than Scanners is.
Yep.
Scanners is a great idea, and if you took what he did here with Videodrome and then like maybe redid Scanners or did it later, it'd be great. Outside of having Michael Ironside, but because it kind of lacks the focus that Videodrome has, and I think you definitely see the growth, in all his facets of filmmaking, special effects, directing, screenplay,
Yeah,
so
I definitely agree with you. The screenplay is a lot tighter, it's a lot more streamlined and flowing. Whereas you could say pretty much every Cronenberg that we've covered so far, Rabid, Scanners, those two both get bogged down by their script itself. Like the quiet moments of those scripts do not bode well for the rest of the movie. They kind of, what should be like a fast-paced movie kind of gets turned into a slog because of that script writing and direction. So I definitely agree with that with Videodrome. All right, so let's take a break real quick talking about the movie. Let's talk about the beer that we have on the show today. We were chasing our white whale with this beer. I had to do some research to actually find this beer around because I wasn't sure that we were going to have it around. We had an interest in it. We saw that it was coming out, but because the brewery, Founders, is not near us, and sometimes they don't distribute certain beers in our vicinity just because of logistics or whatever. I wasn't sure we were going to have it, so I did some research. I tracked down the nearest store that had it in a 40-mile radius, and luckily it happened to be where our buddy frequents and works. And so we asked him to swing by and see if he could find this beer, and sure enough, they had 2 packs, two 4-packs of it, and he grabbed them for both of us. And that's the story of how we're bringing you Founders Ultimate Oktoberfest to the show today. Pretty exciting stuff, right? The journey of a beer connoisseur on how you get some of these beers to your doorstep, because a lot of times, especially ones where they're not really locally distributed, it's nearly impossible if you're looking for it to try to get it. So we've got Founders Ultimate Oktoberfest on the show today, and I think we've covered Founders Oktoberfest, like the traditional marzen, on the show before. Is that right? Do you remember?
I would have to imagine.
I think so. We did.
It'd be a blind spot if we did.
Yeah, it's definitely a staple of my fall season. I think I've gotten the Founders pack of Oktoberfest every year for the past 3 years. So I think at some point we have done it, and I think their Oktoberfest is really, really good. It's nice and malty. It's rich. They do a really good job with that.
They chinched out this year. Usually a 15-pack. Now it's a 12-pack.
That is true. I've heard, because pretty much beer ingredients in general are going up. So there's a much smaller margin of the bottom line. So that may be why.
No, I imagine it's not the shittiest thing, but
no, it was definitely kind of expensive this year, though. Especially they're charging basically $20 for a 12-pack instead of what you normally would get for a 15. So those 3 beers do kind of add up, but I still did it because I want to support Founders.
We like what they do.
That's right, I do. I've tried to get pretty much every 15-pack they make. So this Oktoberfest, this Ultimate Oktoberfest, is their marzen style, but they've taken it a step further, and they have aged it in bourbon barrels. So I have to look at the bottle because I'm not sure how long exactly they've aged it for.
Long enough.
9 months. Yep, 9 months in a bourbon barrel. So they took their marzen style, they let it sit in a bourbon barrel for 9 months, then they packaged it, shipped it out, and that's what Ultimate Oktoberfest is. So I want to start with your thoughts. What do you think about the Ultimate Oktoberfest?
Well, let me just say too, this was a beer that I was looking pretty much forward to. It's not often that you get to see somebody doing something unique with a marzen, with their Oktoberfest. Really, the only other unique thing that's going on for Oktoberfest is, whether or not the brewery decides to do an marzen as their Oktoberfest or fest beer. That's about it. So them aging it in in bourbon barrels and making it an imperial at 10% ABV was definitely intriguing. Now, as Ryan will him and haw about, I like to him and haw about bourbon beers because I can like them, but as I've said before 1,000 times when we've done these beers on the podcast, it's a very thin line between the bourbon barrels and the bourbon taste and the beer that they're, trying to pair with. It's always a very delicate balance. And I think, at least for me, if it goes too far to the bourbon barrel side, you lose all aspects of what make that style of beer that they're trying to elevate to something new special. And it just kind of creates, like if I wanted, the taste of bourbon, I'd be drinking bourbon.
Mm-hmm.
It has its place, mainly, there are good stouts out there that do it well. Like I said, it's a very fine line, though, that you have to kind of manage to do it. That being said, as I'll take a swig, I think this beer does an okay job, and that saddens me. It's a unique idea and definitely a twist I wouldn't think to do with a marzen. However, that being said, the bourbon aspect of this beer totally overpowers the marzen and leaves it very blind, totally kind of blinded to your taste buds. The first thing you're going to sip when you drink this is a oaky, slight smoky bourbon taste, that nice vanilla paint thinner. And then as you drink it, you get a slight hint of breadiness, a slight hint of that marzen maltiness, but it's very muted because the beer itself, the mouth feels very thin. It doesn't have that heartiness that you would expect while drinking a marzen, and even when you do on some swigs kind of find that combination to be perfect, because I have, as I'm drinking it, kind of have found, I get more, I do get a little bit more Oktoberfest there. It is rare, and by the time you do get that, the aftertaste itself is also very bourbon. So, if you like bourbons, bourbon barrel types of beers, this is a unique pairing. You might like it. For me, because there is such a thin line between what makes a bourbon beer good and bad, it's not bad by any stretch. It's definitely drinkable. I've been drinking it for 40 minutes now. I'm almost done. I'm going to have to switch to something else because it is 10%. And it does go down relatively easy for that 10%. But because it is so very much pronounced on that bourbon, very, on the front of the palate, back of the palate, and you don't really get any marzen notes out that much, I would say, try it. But other than that, I would not go out of my way to try this again, which is a shame.
Yeah, I mean,
I would much rather drink an Oktoberfest.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, this is an interesting beer to have, to try and to, change up what you're drinking during the fall, September, October season, because you can only have so many Oktoberfests and then they kind of all blend together, right? But I will say that I think that Ultimate Oktoberfest is a nice treat. It's not going to replace your marzen style. It's definitely not going to be, if you're thinking I want an Oktoberfest, the bourbon barrel-aged Oktoberfest is not what you're going to go to first. You're going to go to a straight traditional Oktoberfest, and there's a reason for that. Marzen styles are very drinkable, perhaps a little bit heavier than the traditional fest beer, but still very drinkable. You can still have a couple of them. The Ultimate Oktoberfest is not a beer that you can do that with as easily, I should say. It is a sipping beer. It is a heavier style because of that bourbon element to it. And you really do need to like the bourbon style in general, like bourbon barrel aged series in general, to get any sort of appreciation out of this beer. With that said, if you do like bourbon barrel styles, I think that you will like this marzen because it does pretty much take on the flavor of a bourbon barrel aged beer, and that is both a good and a bad thing. Like Martin said, the good thing is the bourbon notes come out pretty well. And if you like that style, you're definitely going to appreciate the bourbon notes to it. But that does overwhelm the marzen style to an extent where it is hard to pick out sometimes where you're getting that malty breadiness of the marzen. It almost morphs into like being a very like a thinner mouthfeel of like a bourbon barrel aged stout. You know, and I should say that, you know, with the caveat that like you're not getting all of the stoutness of it, you're not getting all of the coffee and cocoa and stuff like that of a stout, but it does have a thinner mouthfeel to it, and the bourbon barrel aged element does take over and kind of overplay the marzen a little bit. So the interesting thing that I would be curious about with Founders is where did they come up with the 9 months for aging, and what if they played around with that? What if they went a little bit lower on the aging? Maybe 6 months, maybe 5 months. Maybe 9 is a little too much. You know, maybe we're infusing too much bourbon woodiness into this beer. So I'm curious, you know, if they go with 9 months next time, or if they tasted it and they said, you know what, maybe we need to go a little lower, because it's kind of all an experiment, right? You know, you're kind of taking a beer, and especially when you have something like something that needs to be aged, like an Oktoberfest, it's kind of like up in the air. Like, is it going to be good? Is it not going to work out? You don't really know until you wait those 9 months. So I can kind of understand, you know, that this is an experiment. I'd be curious next time to see if they do it like at a different aging level. And I'm curious what they, you know, what Founders themselves, the brewers, actually thought about this. Like, were they satisfied? Were they a little bit put off by the amount of bourbon that came out? Things to think about, you know, for next year. But ultimately, I think it's pretty good. I like it for a treat. I would never pick this up in favor of an Oktoberfest, though. I will stick with Marzens for my fall go-to beers.
Well said.
All right, let's talk.
It's kind of surprising that like it was winning medals for best Oktoberfest.
That is surprising. I mean, I think Founders' traditional Oktoberfest is really good. I don't think that the Ultimate Oktoberfest showcases how good their Oktoberfest is, and I think that's a problem. You kind of want like a little bit of the barrel age, and you want to show how good their Oktoberfest is in the same beer. And I don't think that the Ultimate Oktoberfest does that. I think the bourbon kind of overpowers their really good Marzen. All right, so let's talk about Videodrome. I think it's a really interesting movie, and I think there's a lot to talk about. So I don't know exactly where to start with this, but one thing we do need to talk about is how on the nose David Cronenberg is with a lot of his character naming conventions here. Because we do get pretty early on, we meet a guy who's like I don't know what they specifically call him. He's a professor, and they call him like a TV expert or something like that. And his name is Brian Oblivion, but it's like, you know, Oblivion as in like an Irish name, like Brian Oblivion. But it's pretty on the nose.
It's just like everyone's favorite, the best boss in the world, Dr. King K. Rool from Donkey Kong Country.
Yeah, right. Yeah, where you have like that.
Those nice rare naming conventions, or Gruntilda the Witch, you know.
The stand-in, the middle initial that basically makes a pun in the name. Yeah, and then not only that, but you have Barry Convex, who's the guy who owns an optical store selling glasses and also runs the Videodrome program. His name is Barry Convex, and
you get it.
That might kind of slip over a few people, you know, with the convex lenses and things like that. Especially if you're not a glasses person. You're like, I don't know, I have perfect 20/20 vision. I'm one of the lucky ones.
Oh, fuck you.
Yeah,
I got floaters now because I got nearsighted vision, and my fucking jelly in the back of my eyes going to deteriorate faster than you.
I had a retinal tear because I have shitty eyesight, and that's great. Cost me over $1,000 to get it repaired just because I have shitty eyes. But you listener, with your perfect 20/20 vision, You know what? Unsubscribe right now.
Seriously, no matter the Louis C.K. bit where he talks about him having a fucked up ankle and the doctor just being like, yeah, you're old. You got a shitty ankle now. Deal with it. The older I get, just rings more and more true. Just like, hey, what's wrong with me? You're fucking old.
Yeah.
You deal with it.
Like, what do I do about this? Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing you can do. You just learn to live with it until you die, and it goes away.
Be like your forefathers. Suffer in silence, okay?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, no, it's great. But I like that. I like Cronenberg's naming convention. It has not changed from, his...
Rest of his films.
Yeah, exactly. Because he always kind of goes over the top of those naming conventions. The film itself is kind of hard to summarize because it kind of jumps all over the place. Like, I really, really like the beginning of the movie because it does start off with a very off-kilter pace, and it presents the viewer with something that's kind of taboo within the horror movie element. Even though with horror movies we are talking about death and murder and killers and serial killers, within horror, and I've said that, I probably have said this before, within TV shows that are about murder, right? Like all your police procedural TV shows, CSI Miami, CSI San Diego, CSI New Orleans.
Stop. There's only one CSI, and it's fucking CSI Miami. You're not Horatio Kane doing, his pun and
CSI Reykjavik.
Well, did you see fucking Peacock and like NBC Universal? We need money. What are we gonna do? Let's bring back Law and Order, like 7 different series. So they're gonna have Law and Order SVU. They're bringing back Law and Order Criminal Intent. They're starting up Law and Order like Criminal Syndicate or some bullshit. Sam Waterston's like 85 years old, and they're wheeling him out to be Jack McCoy again.
Like, please stop. Please stop.
Like,
let me rest in peace.
I'm kind of happy about it. I mean, it's gonna be garbage because NBC hasn't done anything good television wise since I don't know, like 30 Rock. But I mean, it's just thinking about it. It's just like, let the poor man die in peace, okay? Like, let me have my memories of watching the reruns on TNT from like 4 to 7 o'clock in my head of Hang 'em High McCoy in his prime, not 80-year-old Sam Waterston, okay? A little off track.
No, it's all right. Well, yeah, no, what I was saying about the police procedurals, though, like police procedurals, horror movies, they tend to view death in like a weird sort of like, we kind of take it seriously, but also at the same time, like, it's kind of jokey or...
It's blasé.
Yeah,
blasé.
Exactly. Like when someone dies in a movie, you see the funeral, like everyone's sad, and then you move on, right? Like, because dealing with the repercussions of death and the depression and the ensuing, stages of grief is not really good television or not good movie making, because you could have a whole 90 minutes about the stages of grief that someone went through. So it's kind of all skipped over. In Videodrome, we kind of go into that in detail in the beginning of the movie because we have James Woods' character, who's Max Wren. He runs Civic TV. It's a cable TV station that specializes in pornographic content, violent content, stuff that you just wouldn't see on like the normal cable, like normal networks.
Well, hold on. First off, you got to explain to the children what UHF even is.
Well, it's ultra high frequency. So.
Okay.
What?
Well, explain to the children. Like, that's...
Well, so he's intercepting these transmissions from other, what he thinks is like another channel, another station that's in a different country, for that matter. And he's got a guy that's working on just intercepting these channels so that he can track down like the best content, right? He's trying to track down what generally is not shown right now. Like Cronenberg kind of makes it out that what Max has been pitched by the normal people that give him, pitches for TV shows. It's just not enough at this point. Like I think one lady, Masha, brings him like this really like softcore porn show that's like based on Apollo and Dionysus.
It's like Caligula without.
Yeah, it's basically like a really softcore Caligula of just like women running around half naked, bringing grapes and wine to people. And he's like, this isn't enough. This is like the barest of the bare. Like people now are not watching TV and are like, oh, there's a nude woman on there and getting her rocks off. No, they need weird fucking shit now. And he recognizes that. Like even in 1983, people needed weird fucking shit to get off. It's not like anything's new now where you have like the triple exorcist where people needed to be like pea soup vomited on to get off, while Reagan is naked. No, it's been around since 1983 at least, as Videodrome can attest. And so he's looking for like the best stuff, the newest stuff, the most pushing the boundary stuff that he can find. And so that's why he's trying to intercept these radio waves, these frequencies from other countries that might be doing something different that he can like track down and then kind of get on his TV station. And that was kind of before like streaming and stuff where people would come to you and pitch shit. Like he's like trying to be the person that finds that stuff and tracks it down and gets it onto his channel.
The point being is UHF, I mean, it's not that he's pirating it is what makes it UHF. The point is it's radio being broadcast over TV. Mm-hmm. It's radio broadcasting waves. Him being just like, yeah, got this Japanese guy. What you got here? Samurai porn? Let's watch this. Yeah.
Right. And honestly, most of the shit that he's got on there is like it would be considered pretty boring. Like that Samurai Dreams show that he's got on there.
I thought it said like Sauna Dreams when I was like the font. I was like,
might as well be, right? It's like that's like it's kind of funny too because I've seen movies like that. I've seen movies like Samurai Dreams where it's like, mostly softcore porn, but like there's like a hint of a storyline, but it's really slow moving. And that's pretty much what Samurai Dreams meant, except in this case, it's a TV show. And it's like, you're not going to understand episode 10 if you don't watch the first 3. No, I think they'll get it. That's pretty much what James Wood says, too. He's like, my viewer base, they ain't going to watch episode 1 and 2. They're not, quote, unquote, watching, okay?
Also brings you back to the glory days of the Hot Channel sitting there, having to close your eye and try to, like...
You do like the
wait for the unscrambled signal to come in.
You do like the what do they call those? Like the magic art, whatever those things are, and you like try to pick out the nipple from the. I think I saw a hint of pubic hair there from the scrambled porn channel. Mm-hmm. At least you got the.
Times
at least sometimes
back in the day.
The volume came in. You could hear what was going on. You couldn't appreciate the visuals, but you could hear it. You had to get creative there.
It's also funny too. It's intentional irony that he's got in there that the guy that's airing softcore porn and violent stuff is on the Civic Channel. Mm-hmm.
Because in Videodrome, actually, Max Wren, he goes on to a TV broadcast, and they're talking about there's basically this woman who's doing the broadcast is like kind of set this up. She's got Debbie Harry, who plays Nikki Brand, who's like a radio DJ, and kind of gives out like self-help advice. And she's got her on there. She
is the inspiration for Tara Reid and Urban Legend.
Yeah, you're right. Basically, except they kind of like with Tara Reid, they kind of went even further. Like Nikki Brand in here, it's kind of interesting because they make her out to be like, especially at the beginning of the movie, sort of. I don't know, innocent and concerned about the use of violence and sexuality and the desensitization of that to listeners and viewers. And then all of a sudden, when she's going out with Max, she's a literal freak in the bed.
Well, no, but even before that, when she seems kind of concerned on the TV show, but when we see her at the studio recording, she's dressed up like in her Olivia Newton-John "Let's Get Physical" outfit.
Yeah.
And then as like someone's like on a suicide hotline, she's like, "Your life's a wreck. totally right.
You're so right about
But you need help. Get help.
You're so
Call
right
this
about the
line for
Olivia
help.
Newton-John outfit. I did find that really distracting too. Like, why is she in like a workout outfit
and
when
not only
she's on
that,
the radio?
she has her headphones on, and I'm doing it like right now, like I'm in We Are the World, and Michael Jackson's yelling at me because I'm Huey Lewis. I'm singing off key, and I got my headset like just the one muff on my right ear, like We Are the World. That's like how she's like looking, like when she's trying to talk somebody off a ledge, essentially. Like when she's like, I wanted to kill my sister. She's like, no, don't do it. Just listen to me. Listen to my voice. Call the Civic TV, the C-RAM or whatever, the Canadian Radio, help hotline, and we'll get you help. Okay. Maybe you just do things fucking differently up in Canada. We run prizes for cars and football tickets, and they're like, don't kill your sister, and we'll give you a prize.
Yeah, I mean, I think Debbie Harry's character is really interesting in this movie, and it kind of brings out the fact, especially on that talk show, where Max says, "Listen, I give people an avenue, so they're not doing this on the street. They're watching in the comfort of their own home. They've got the moisturizer right next to them. They got tissues." They're not going out on the street and like finding someone to do this to. They're watching it and carrying out their fantasies through Civic TV. And so he doesn't find himself to be a bad person. And he does have like, Cronenberg kind of goes into the fact that he does have like a moral ethical code too. When he's talking to Masha, and he's like, I avoid the bad stuff. I have a feeling about things. I know when something is not, when there's like an actual like crime or something. And so he kind of talks about this as he starts to intercept these radio signals of Videodrome, which is like this weird, really, really, really cheap torture and sex rape TV show that he's been intercepting. And they initially think it's coming from like Malaysia. Is that racist? I don't know. I don't know where they got that from, but eventually they find out it's just coming from Pittsburgh, and it's
George Romero is broadcasting.
Absolutely, he's making these really low budget, basically like torture porn movies before torture porn was actually a thing, and Max loves it, and so does Nikki, Debbie Harry's character, and they kind of. They get down to it, and it kind of inspires them to go their own BDSM route. And Nikki is obviously into like cutting and pain and experiencing the border between pain and pleasure, and it expresses interest in actually going on the show where they basically flog and whip women and basically tie them up and debase them, and that's the show.
Okay, so let's take it back a second. Let's go to like James Woods and Debbie Harry. When like he pops, how would you feel on your first date with someone that, by the way, is the weirdest fucking date setup ever? Because they're on that the show. The lady's trying to talk to Dr. Oblivion, and James Woods like, I think you're beautiful. Would you go on a date with me? And they just start chit-chatting up on the side. And then they're like, excuse me. But then they go on their date, and then they come back, and he's got his, what whiskey does he have there? Do we even get to see it?
I don't even know. I don't know.
We'll just call it the, I'm trying to blank. What the hell's the whiskey that, Kurt Russell has in, the thing? What is it called? That's annoying me now that I don't. J&B. Yeah, so
J&B.
They're drinking their J&B scotch, sitting there, and then she's like sifting through his video bin, like, got any porno?
Yeah.
And then he's like, huh? And she's like, it turns me on. And it's like, oh, okay. How would you feel like if you're sitting there and like oh, you're gonna do Netflix and chill, and she's like, got any porn?
I'd be like, yes, I sure do, actually. I have a lot of 70s old porn that I've obtained over the years. No.
So it's not like the weirdest thing, but okay.
But I mean, like, it definitely is.
But then you go on to, I got this thing, And then they pop in a Videodrome, and it's some poor woman getting beat and smacked on the ass.
And she's like, I'm actually a little bit turned on by this.
And she's like, I like this. And he's like, really?
Well,
and then,
what I think
then,
is
but
really,
then she's like, cut me.
I really think what is interesting too is like you have to assume like Max has probably like tapes and tapes of porn, right? Like he has all kinds of stuff from
the
his
opening.
Yeah, he has all kinds of stuff from his TV
sit-
channel.
He's sitting there sifting through the pictures, which again, the weirdest. Like, what was he even eating? Like, he's got milk that he's drinking, but what was that he was eating?
It's like
at the beginning?
espresso with like he's like dipping.
Is that like leftover pizza?
Yeah,
it looks
pizza.
like it's the weird. Like, so fucking.
Yeah, he's
weird.
like dipping pizza into his espresso. Yeah, no, it's no, but like what I was getting at is like he probably has a ton of porn, but what he chooses to show Nikki is this weird fucking torture porn that he's like, you may like it, you probably won't like it.
I think
we could turn it off if you want.
But I see, so like the whole so that part right there, and we'll get talked about it more when it comes to like the whole hallucination aspect. I think that is like from there on, like is where the whole hallucination is starting.
Oh, for sure, because the film does really make it evident that like once you take in this signal, the Videodrome signal, like that's it's starting. You're getting a fucking brain tumor. It's like it's like entering Chernobyl. Like that's it. How far did you get? 150 feet into Chernobyl. All right, you're dead, man.
400 Rodkins. What?
Yeah. Like it's definitely, I do think that in a way, yes, that the hallucination element of Videodrome is in fact starting, like even before we really recognize that anything weird is going on. The weirdness of how Nikki acts is really the hallucination, and they even say later on in the movie that Nikki is like a figment. It's really just been used to influence Max, and she really wasn't even there. Like she was, they kind of make it seem like all along Nikki, there hasn't been a Nikki. She was part of Videodrome, and we murdered her, but she hasn't been like real. And I do think that that's an interesting element and makes Videodrome make more sense after you watch it, and you kind of think like, well, what? There's some weird stuff going on in that storyline, like how people would react, and then ultimately you start thinking about it, and you're like, oh, okay, it's hallucinations, and Cronenberg kind of playing with the viewer. And I think that's where that's where Videodrome goes, throughout the movie, and that's why it works that the film shifts so much. I really like the snuff element of Videodrome itself because it's very, like I said at the beginning, it's very taboo to deal with death as a reality of something, and especially murder as a reality of something that happens. Is it really snuff though? We don't really get to see any snuff elements until like the very end. He goes on his where he's getting programmed to kill. Yeah, they don't really go into that. They definitely go in. I mean, they definitely make it seem like there is an element to that because they talk about torture and how no one comes back. They was like, no one comes back in the next episode. No, I mean I get that, but I mean we don't actually get to see it. So that's true. That's true. It's implied. It's implied to the viewer and to Max because we really don't know much more than Max. We're all implied. Yes, there's snuff involved, but we don't really know for sure. And it could again because, like you said, we don't see it. Max doesn't see it. It's just implied. Who knows if that's really happening or if it's just like. Get an actor to come in like, hey, can you deal with some flogging? I mean, it's not any different than like the kink porn that's out now, using machines and whips and stuff like that. It does bring up an interesting point was there any murder to begin with? Or is it just this sinister video signal that's causing issues and hallucinations? I do think that's a really interesting element to Videodrome, that you have a character who is basically a stand-in for the viewer who really doesn't know a whole lot more than we do and is very unreliable, especially towards the end of the movie where we don't really know if what we're seeing is reality. Is he really experiencing this? And what is Cronenberg showing us? Because we know that in the movie multiple characters talk about how TV is like the eye of the mind, right? Like what we see on TV becomes our reality because we're basically TV is like a retina. We're taking in what's on the TV. It becomes reality. Our reality is based on what we see. And I think that's a really interesting scope to this movie that gives it a really odd tone that is hard to kind of break through. And I think that it's a place where some people will not appreciate Videodrome. Some people will not appreciate that. While I think that Cronenberg's being pretty explicit with his themes, they will not like the fact that the actual hallucination moments are not clear whether they're meant to be real or not. And I think that people will be put off by that. Some people don't like to feel like they don't know what's going on or like if it's real or not. What do you think about that? Like the fact that we don't know what is real, what is not, what is meant to be interpreted as actually happening.
I agree. The lucidity of it all is going to, depending on how you are as a viewer and how you intake the information, whether or not you're going to appreciate it, is definitely there. Because again, throughout the entire film, with that lucidity going on, like that nice dream-like hallucination that he's going on throughout, 3/4 of the film, you can pick in specific moments, like as a viewer yourself, where you think the reality finally breaks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for me, as a viewer, as a voyeur in this journey, for me, after watching it all, I would assume after his first watching of Videodrome, everything is a hallucination that he's taking in.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're just seeing how his mind is reacting and everything. He's, an unreliable narrator basically after the first 20 minutes. And everything's a fiction, kind of. That's for me. Somebody else might find, like, maybe it's a later break. Some people might not like it at all, period. But I do think that's a very interesting aspect. I do like that. It's also it's an interesting critique, too, on not just television, but media itself, especially coming from the early 80s where, depictions of violence and sex, especially on TV, very toned down compared to today.
Mm-hmm.
And the outlets that you have that expressed a lot smaller than what we have today, because now you can go on the internet and find anything you want. So that's interesting, kind of seeing it from a lens of the 80s. But one question I would have for you on that too, like the whole kind of like media critique of like the perception that we're seeing. 'Cause I don't think Cronenberg's just specifically referring to television in this.
No,
I think film.
Uh-huh.
You could also say like music and books. You being like a literature guy, I find it kind of interesting because before you had TV, before you had recorded music and such, you had books as the means of transferring information. But for the longest time, that was kind of something that was you had to understand a book, you have to first know how to read. TV being kind of, and especially now, it's just a visual thing where you can see and kind of interpret. Do you think like there's any kind of like connection there? Like,
between books and between what Cronenberg is saying about books and then TV.
Yeah, and like
Yeah,
because,
I don't know.
Because,
I don't feel like Videodrome really goes into the element of books or literature to the extent that it does television. Cronenberg definitely is making a statement, like you said, not just about TV, but TV as an entity. Whether you are seeing a movie, whether you're watching TV, whatever you're watching on that screen becomes your interpretation of reality. Because even when we watch that video with Brian Oblivion, who talks about how our own interpretation of reality is based on like what we see. Someone's reality may be a little bit different than other person's reality because of what they've experienced and what they've seen. I think that really, the impact there is to say that it's what you've taken in, what you've seen. I don't know, like with books, you could make that case. I don't know that Cronenberg is in this example.
I think, okay, let me kind of rephrase that. Because I don't think he, like, specifically books, but for me, like, as somebody, and reading a little bit more into it, because, like as media as a whole, and especially, like, trying to compare it from the 80s to today, and then from before. Books, as, like, a medium, to understand books, you have to have the concept of being able to read and have understanding.
Yeah.
So it's, a more mature kind of way of communication, because you have to be able to understand. And I don't mean mature in, like, a certain way, but, like, to be able to understand, you have to be able to, first be able to read it and then comprehend it and kind of process it. Whereas with television and, like, a lot of digital media now, it's more, open to the masses for consumption, because it's just look, and then however your mind kind of decides to process that information is how you interpret it. That's kind of where I was going with that, because it's not like anything that's the book part's not even in the film. I'm just like, as like kind of like a media critique kind of thinking about it, and especially with like today now with the internet and being more connected to media itself and being surrounded by media even more so than in the 80s. It's kind of just like an interesting idea of how it's all intertwined in how we kind of interact with it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I like I said, I don't think Videodrome is really going into that, but I think you could definitely see that as well. I think that Cronenberg is just talking specifically, like, I think the idea of this homeless shelter that Brian Oblivion and then his daughter Bianca Oblivion is running, where it's basically based on having homeless people come in and watch TV, like it's going to change their lives. I think it's really an interesting idea of, like, and you see too, like when they come in, there's one guy that's like watching like it's really hard to see, but he's like watching like a open heart surgery or something.
Cannibal Holocaust.
Yeah, no, it's like, but it's really interesting because he doesn't really go too far into this like sort of pseudo religion of coming in and watching TV, and he doesn't really dive into like if it's helping or hurting these people. But it is interesting that they're creating a religion around television, as though it's something, because Brian Oblivion truly believes, or at least the tapes that he made believe, that watching TV is going to provide some sort of like outlet. And I think that's kind of weird too, because Brian Oblivion is a victim of Videodrome, especially since he watched The Signal and becomes like the first victim of Videodrome to, have a brain tumor, basically dies because of Videodrome. And yet his whole philosophy is based on the fact that these people are going to get better because they're watching TV. And we have basically Videodrome 2, kind of like Scanners. We have two factions to Videodrome. We have the faction of the people who are making Videodrome, which includes Barry Convex, who is the guy who runs an optical store. He says he makes glasses for third world countries, real cheap glasses for third world countries, and he makes chips for NATO for their weapons. And then he also makes this Videodrome video thing that is basically trying to usher in like a new world of people, because they're being basically brainwashed by TV, and he believes that like their sinful nature of watching these things is the perfect way to basically send out the signal to get rid of them. And then you have the other faction, which is based on Brian Oblivion's philosophy of fighting against these people, and that's where the new flesh comes into play. And it's a really interesting, complex scenario that Videodrome sets out, And I don't feel that Cronenberg really comes down on a particular, message or statement of what he means by this Videodrome complexity. And I think that might be where some people will have another issue with Videodrome, in that the interpretation is really left up to the viewer. There's many different interpretations that you can have of Videodrome. For one thing, specifically, did any of this happen, or was it a hallucination throughout the entire film? Or was some of it hallucination, some of it real? Did Max really put a gun into his stomach and then pull it out and then have it, basically connect to his body, and shoot a guy and have him like disintegrate into a cancerous skeleton? Did that happen, or was that a reality that Cronenberg presented to us through the TV? And then not only that, but where do you stand in terms of violence and sexuality that you view? Is there a good to it? Why are you watching this? There's a lot of complexity to Videodrome, and I don't know that you totally need to understand it. I think that the thought itself is enough to just have you appreciate what Cronenberg was trying to get across with this movie. However, what do you think that Cronenberg was saying when we talk about sex and violence? Because he seems to side with Max Wren at some points. Of course, he thinks that in making this movie too, it's pretty ultra violent. It has multiple scenes of body horror, sticking hands into sexually explicit crevices. A man literally being
big vagina guts.
Yeah, a man literally being dissolved, and you hear him like gasping and gagging on the intercom. I mean, it's pretty ultra violent, and yet in the movie, there's also the question that Barry Convex asks James Woods himself: why did you watch this snuff film? What would make a person want to watch that? And it's kind of like again, we talked about that a little bit with Funny Games and Michael Haneke, and whether like what he was trying to say about why people watch violent videos. Why do you make them in the first place? What do you think Cronenberg's saying about that?
I will always say it's curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
It's voyeurism. It's to see something that you're not supposed to see. And I think films, video games, etc., they give you means to see these situations, though for the most part not always portrayed realistically, but they give you a chance to experience that, like something that's taboo that you're not supposed to see, but you get to. And that's kind of the point of it. It's so the taboo-ness is what makes it sexy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's always there's a voyeur in all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Want things, certain taboos that you wouldn't want to explore, but if you were given the chance to peek at, you would.
I think
that's just human nature,
Yeah, I think like basically Videodrome kind of gets down to that element of curiosity. I think you're right. Like everybody has sort of that curiosity, and also there is an element to it of like how much can you take? How much can you really put up with?
Not only that, though, too, there's also an element of, sorry to interrupt, but there's an element of, it's the same principle of why do you look at a car crash when you drive by? Well, fuck, that's awful. Glad that's not me.
Right.
And you move on. It's the same thing with, like, the voyeuristic aspect, especially with, like, violence, seeing that kind of stuff. You can be like, oh, fuck. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Glad that's not me.
It definitely brings up, like, the same ideas of why we do have like that morbid reality exposure on the internet. Like when I was younger, probably like in my teens, I used to be really interested, not like pervertedly interested, but interested curiously about real life death photos. And it was like a sort of like a it was
What the hell was that site that
like
had
rotten.com.
Yeah,
And it was not something that you would ever like. I was looking at and I'm like, oh yeah, that's so cool. It was something that I would look at and it would be like, can I how much can I possibly like take in without, you know, like being totally disgusted? And it's just like a curiosity thing. And now in my older age, I have really no interest in that because I think like as you get to a certain point, you experience like real hardship, real tragedy, real death. And at a certain point, you kind of take a step back and you say like, you know what, I've experienced enough. Like, I don't really need to go any further into that. I don't really need that more tragedy in my life. But at a certain point, you have that curiosity of just like, what is this like? What is death like? What is, you know, you have that curiosity. And I think Videodrome kind of captures that really well because I think that's kind of like where Max is at when he's watching that video. It's not truly about being fascinated by what you're seeing. And to be honest with you, he seems to think in the movie that it's truly fake. You know, he thinks it has good, you know, has poor production values, which it basically is kind of like it sounds like a negative, but it's really him saying, wow, it's cheap and it makes it seem real, but he doesn't think it's real. And I think it's you know, it's just the curiosity of like, where is this going to go? How far is it going to go? That I think that Cronenberg is saying that is pretty much inherent in all humanity, that we want to see how far things can go. We want to kind of toe the line between morbidity, and I think that's where kind of the character that Debbie Harry portrays too, Nikki, kind of toes that line between pain and pleasure, and kind of has an interest in both of those elements. And I think Debbie Harry does a really good job as this character too. She doesn't get too much screen time, but she does a great job of portraying the character in a way that you understand. She's got like a sexiness to her and a lure to her, but also you're kind of like skeptical of her as a person, and I think she does a really great job in that role. And it's an interesting character for the film, especially since she's truly not a main character throughout most of the movie.
I like her boobies.
And her boobies are nice too.
You can see them a lot.
Yeah, unfortunately she has to snuggle up to James Woods, but it's probably a decision that haunts her. But other than that, fun time with Debbie Harry. And I like the red hair too. I think it goes.
Oh,
looks great on her. Really nice. But yeah, we haven't really touched. There was so much to talk about. We haven't really touched on the body horror elements to Videodrome, except for like tangentially. But what do you think about the special effects that are in this movie? Especially, you know, like you have the whole scenes where James Woods is kind of, you know, basically, for lack of a better term, fisting himself in his stomach. You have the whole gun morphing into his hand. What do you think about the special effects?
Well, for one of the reasons why I've been very disappointed so far in the Cronenberg films is with Scanners from Rabbit. Cronenberg's supposed to be this master of body horror. Haven't seen it yet. Finally, we get there. We're here. It's not like the greatest, but we're here.
Mm-hmm.
Special effects were done by the same guy that did the effects for American Werewolf in London, which we reviewed earlier this year. So check that episode out.
Mm-hmm.
They're very good. The whole when we get to see, you know, James Woods' vagina stomach, it's very well done. I think even like the simple effects in the apartment with like the flexing of the TV and the heater and such, that's, you know, very well done too. You know, the whole him like trying to go face first into the TV because he's hearing Debbie Harry moan, essentially like every time, like, you know, like he's like kind of like tripping, you start to see, you know, hear her kind of like in the background, kind of, you know, getting off a little, like him like going into the TV, and that kind of effect of him like actually going into it is good. say anything with like when the TV's like the pistols coming out of the TV. The effects in this film are really well done. The whole gun, like the gun, like kind of connecting to him is kind of it's weird. It's not that it's bad. It is done well, but I mean it's like a weird, like kind of out of nowhere idea. Like what? But you know, it's there. I think the effects in film overall are really a step above. It's definitely miles and miles above from what Scanners and Rabbit has to offer.
I think the scene where Barry Convex dissolves is a really great scene. It's kind of haunting, to be honest with you. You know, where Max shoots him, you know, a few times, and you're like, oh, okay, you know, he's just shot. You know, because he shot other people. You know, he shot people in the TV station, and they just died because they were shot. But in this case, he shoots Barry Convex, and Barry Convex basically starts to like dissolve into a skeleton. He like
monster.
Yeah, like he starts like growing cancerous appendages and shit. And then over the loudspeaker, you just hear him like gagging and gurgling. It's a pretty disturbing moment in the film, and I think it works really, really well. And I think they did a good job with the special effects on there. That's sort of.
He deserves it. Who the fuck is having like dancers at a fucking glasses convention, like you know, doing like a Vegas like routine? That was like the weirdest fucking thing in the world.
I will say though that I love Leslie Carlson. It's very great to see him in a bigger role in this movie. Since from what I know him from, primarily is Black Christmas and A Christmas Story. You know, Bob Clark really liked to use him in his movies, and it's great to see him in a bigger role than what he got in those two movies. I think he does a good job here. He has like that very nice slicked back businessman approach to it that I think works really well. But yeah, I think like the special effects and the gore are well done. They're not overt in most scenes, but it has like its moments, and I think those moments really shine through in Videodrome. So I think it's a really great body horror element that kind of shows up here that wasn't really a part of a lot of Cronenberg's previous output. What else did we touch on that you wanted to talk about?
That might be about that.
Yeah, I think we covered pretty much everything. We kind of went into a really deep discussion of the philosophy of Videodrome. And
what did you think of the end?
I like the end. I think that it has a really interesting element to it that, you know, he sees reality through the TV screen. He sees his own reality of committing suicide through the TV screen, and it occurs, and then we see it again through his own reality. And I think that's a really cool idea. However, like you said, was it all a hallucination? Did he just lose his mind towards the end of the movie? It's certainly up for interpretation, and I think I like that Cronenberg leaves it up to interpretation. I appreciate that.
You never described. Sorry to interrupt again, but you never described like. So where do you think the line for you is on that?
I definitely think that Cronenberg is coming to the conclusion that people are interested in curiosity, and television is a means of portraying that. And because James Woods' character does come to the conclusion that it says "Long live the new flesh," and he is working for Brian Oblivion and Bianca Oblivion to a certain extent, and their philosophy that TV can cure, I do think that Cronenberg is coming to the point that there's a line between curiosity and then crossing over that to actually doing these things. And I think that in the sense of Videodrome, that line has been crossed. Like, Videodrome, to a certain extent, is real. Whether they're actually committing snuff or not is, left open. But they are, obviously, their intention is to show that it could happen, and then they're trying to basically kill off an entire population of people who might be drawn to that, or might be drawn to pornography to some extent, or violence, whether it be sexual or not. But the draw for those people is that they don't do that stuff. And Barry Convex is very much in the business of doing that stuff. While he thinks he's like taking out like, people with perverted minds, he's really truly doing that stuff at the same time. And so I think that Cronenberg is coming to the conclusion at the end of Videodrome that it is okay to be curious and to be fascinated by violence and sexuality, because it means that you are not actually partaking in that. And to be honest with you, I think the end of the movie with Max, killing himself, committing suicide with his own gun that he's pulled out of his vagina cavity, I do think that is sort of unclear as to what the ultimate point of him doing that is. Is it perhaps that he's too corrupted at this point? Maybe. I don't know. I think overall, though, it is just a really interesting movie, and it just leaves a lot of avenues open for interpretation. And I think that's why it's so interesting to watch, why even like at an hour and 27 minutes, it's very brisk and never really lets up. So you don't really have that issue of feeling like, oh, there's a lot of like dead air here. It's quick to the point, and you kind of move through things really fast, and it has a few different points of where it branches off from like its immediate storyline, and I think that works really well for the movie, and that's why it is more enjoyable than some of Cronenberg's other output. All right, so what would you give Videodrome on a scale of 0 to 10? What do I want for my scale? I'm trying to think here. 0 to 10. Tetsuo arm guns.
You're forgetting the Tetsuo from Robot Chicken. I'll give it a 8, and I'm going to break a rule because it always goes in halves. 8.25 out of 10. I like this film quite a bit. The more I kind of think about it, the more it's kind of resonating with me. This is easily outside of The Fly, Cronenberg's best directed, best thought out, best written film. It's very good. Very, very good. I like the idea in this film. Makes you think a lot. Like, again, when we were discussing like the whole book aspect, and like it is more me kind of spitballing like media in general, because it kind of made me kind of think about it like, holistically today's world. Because again, TV of the 80s compared to TV of today is two totally different beasts, especially seeing as how radio and music and the internet since 1983 have greatly evolved since then. It's giving me a lot of, it does have a lot of interesting ideas in here. I think unlike Scanners, they're well thought out, nuanced, give you a lot of room to think. It's well acted. Debbie Harry's great in this, very seductive, very charming. James Woods is great too. He's very charismatic. Effects are great in this film. I will say the one kind of really down thing about this film, and the body horror is great. The one down thing about this film is, I think, kind of the whole exposition dumps at times are very kind of like, because the whole like, what's Videodrome, it's like fucking Marsha, which can be annoying because it makes it kind of hard to follow at times, just because they're like, the Videodrome is this and Videodrome does that, and like, well, the Videodrome is doing this, what's doing that, and it's just kind of like, if you're not paying attention, like, then it kind of falls apart at points. I think it would be kind of better if they kind of just, let it be, like, let like what's going on kind of be, instead of constantly referring to Videodrome. But I do think this is a very good film. It's very enjoyable. It's only 89 minutes long. Doesn't feel like it. It's unlike one of the criticisms that I had with Rabbit and Scanners, that is they were not well paced. This is very well paced. It's a nice watch. Yeah, I like it. I like this movie a lot. I'd say 8.25 because I like it as much as I like it. I don't think I could earnestly give it an 8.5. But I do think this is a very worthwhile film with very worthwhile ideas, great acting, a decent score, very good body horror aspects and effects that are understated but very well done. So I'd say 8.25.
I would give this an 8.5. I really like Videodrome. I have always liked it since I first saw it, and I think it really, seeing it again, definitely still cements that I really like this movie. I think it does a really good job of capturing the taboo-ness of the snuff elements to it. It has a great sexiness to it that I think, again, adds to the taboo element of it, because Debbie Harry really shouldn't be sexy in this movie, but she is. And
why not?
Because she should seem to the viewer like a weirdo, right? Like
a harpy.
Cut my shoulder blade. It should seem like a weirdo, but to me,
no
way. I do that in an instant. You want your shoulder cut? No problem.
I was gonna say, we forgot about the whole mid thrust and spooning. Like, by the way, pierce my ear.
Yeah.
With this needle.
It's great.
There goes my boner.
Yeah. No, but I like it. I think, like, again, like, it's that taboo-ness that really comes out in Videodrome that you don't get a lot in movies, and I think it does. It works really well. I like the fact that the film kind of goes off the rails a little bit. And by going off the rails, I mean that you as the viewer and Max as a character really have no bearing on what's going on, and that's intentional. And I think that, like, if you go with that, if you're open to that, and you're open to at times not knowing what's happening, Videodrome can be a really satisfying experience, especially if you are okay with the fact that at the end of the movie you may not really totally understand what Cronenberg was going for. That's fine. It's left up to interpretation, and I think that's a really good point in Videodrome, that you don't have to, like, if you're watching it for the first time, you don't have to completely understand what is meant by this movie. Just go with it. Just let it play out, and then at the end of the movie, you can kind of reassess, figure out how you feel about it, and then watch it again and see if the context clues that you just took in make a difference in how you interpret the movie. And with that said, too, I think James Woods does a really good job. He's an asshole, but he's really good in this movie. I think he does a really good job playing a sort of an asshole in this movie, which probably makes sense considering the fact that he's an asshole in real life. So works out pretty well. There's that great scene we didn't talk about where he hallucinates that he slaps Bridie, which is great. Like, he just like hauls off and smacks her, thinking that it might be Nikki, then it's Bridie, then he thinks he slapped him.
Oh, that's great too, because she's like, you didn't smack me. It's like, that's right, it's the 1980s. The women apologize.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I like all of those elements to this movie, and I think it does a really good job. And the gore effects and the body horror are really on point here too. So I think all of that really sums up a very satisfying experience to watch with Videodrome. It's a very brisk movie. You really, it's less than 90 minutes. You don't need any more than that. You kind of get in and get out, and it's definitely worth a watch. That's our best reviewed Cronenberg yet, besides The Fly, which we didn't do in Craven Some Cronenberg. So next up, we have another Craven movie, and
Our last one.
it's our last one, and we saved what I would call the worst for last. We're doing, and that could be misinterpreted too, because some people might think the worst is Cursed, but in this case, we're doing My Soul to Take.
I don't know. A lot of people still hate Scream 4 because they're fucking idiots.
Yeah. No, we're doing My Soul to Take, and it's been a while since I've seen this movie. I don't remember much about it at all, because I think that says a lot about the movie itself, that I don't remember anything about it.
It's also during college when you're drinking vodka handles.
True. Yeah.
Traipsing.
And if it, like I said, I don't remember anything about it, but I did just rewatch Cursed not too long ago, and that movie is pretty bad, so I don't think we're in for a treat here. But it should be fun to talk about at least. So, My Soul to Take will be next, and then
I have heard of it. I remember it coming out. I didn't see it. So,
yeah. Well, we're gonna check it out, and we're gonna see what we think, and then we're gonna finish it out with a Cronenberg movie. So, got a couple episodes left, and we're gonna sneak in Halloween Ends there at some point too. Because of course we'll need to.
Evil dies tonight.
That's right. We'll see Evil die for the last time, supposedly.
Isn't it like 3 years after?
Yeah, I guess. I actually have not been following any details about the movie because I don't want to know. I would rather not be significantly disappointed. You know what I mean?
Who do you think's at fault for if this movie falls? Do you think it's Danny McBride?
I think it's having too many writers in the
kitchen.
Yeah.
You don't think it's the production? Like maybe it's the fucking Mehmet Malika Khan and his family.
No, I think it's just having too many people. Too many people working on it at the same time and just getting all muddled. That would be my take. But so we'll do Halloween Ends at some point, definitely.
Well, we have to. We promised it.
We promised. All right, so but thanks for listening to our Craven Some Cronenberg series. We're gonna be doing My Soul to Take next time. So you'll want to tune in for that. So subscribe.
What's our last Cronenberg episode?
I don't know. We didn't decide. So
I think we did. You forgot as you like.
Dead Ringers, you want to do?
Well, he does have a new movie out this year.
Crimes of the Future. We could do that, or we could do The Brood, which I would be interested in doing as well.
But that's in the same vein as the other shit.
Well, I don't know. I guess we'll have to talk about it and see what we want to do.
Maybe we'll have to do The Dead Zone. That has Christopher Walken.
I love it. The Dead Zone's a good movie, for sure.
Christopher Walken.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about it and see. But you'll want to tune in for all that stuff. So subscribe to us on pretty much any podcasting app that you can think of. We're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, our home base at Anchor.fm, Good Pods, pretty much anything. So subscribe, leave us a nice review on there. We're on Facebook and Twitter. Just search for us on there, Blood and Black Rum Podcast. We are on Patreon, where you can give us money. We certainly appreciate that. That's patreon.com/Blood and Black Rum Podcast. Thanks for donating in advance. And then we have an email address at bloodandblackrumpodcast@gmail.com, where you can write to us, let us know what you like, what you don't like, what movies you want us to cover, and we'll certainly take that into consideration. So we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we hope you tune in for the next one on My Soul to Take, where we shit on that movie. So until then,
I'm gonna love it.
Yeah.
Take care.